Welcome to EnTrench, a 21 Pilots podcast. Hello, local dreamers. Welcome to EnTrench. My name is Anna, and this is episode 67, Heathens. Make sure you've listened to the song beforehand and are ready for an in-depth analysis. We have a lot of ground to cover today, so I have no time to hesitate. So, firstly, it's been almost a month since the last podcast, so I wanted to address the Paladin Straight music video. That is not as new as it was like a couple weeks ago, but personally I had a wonderful experience. Did not intend for this to happen, but I had been meaning to finish reading through the Clancy CD journal, which is a compilation of all the journals Clancy's written over the years, because I was, rusty and everything, and I ended up reading them all the night before the video came out. So I was very fresh with everything, and it made it very fun to go into the video. And yeah, so I don't want to go into too much detail because I feel like all of those annotations that I did and things that I analyzed are more so for the future, but definitely getting to reread all the Clancy journals at once was very helpful to understanding the lore better, because I feel like we had such a piecemeal for so many years, and I feel like as a whole, I understood Clancy's story a lot better, and his relationship with Keons and Nico and all the different characters, really. And so going into the video, everything was very solid in my mind in terms of everything that had led up to that point in the storyline. And I ended up watching it with Becca. I was very, very grateful to watch it with someone. It was a very emotional experience. At first, we're just kind of getting engrossed in the scene as the video started, and for me, I just felt a lot of apprehension, I have no idea what's going to happen and how it's all going to pan out. I was like, wow, this is great. It's 5.5 minutes. And it felt like 2 minutes. It ended, and I was seriously there's no way that was just 5.5 minutes. It was like a time speed warp or something. 1 minute it started, and 30 seconds later it was done. But the part that really made me want to cry, I started tearing up, was when the vultures appeared. It's they're closing in on Dima, and it really just hit me that we were nearing a close, because all of the different themes were meeting each other in the middle, basically, from Trench, from Blurry Face, from Scaled and Icy, and Clancy. And I think that's the exact moment when it also hit me this really feels like I've been reading an entire series, and is truly the coolest musical experience I've ever had, because nothing else has ever come close to feeling like I'm reading multiple novels, or that feeling you get when you get to the end of a book and you're empty. I've never felt that in music before 21 Pilots, and so this has just been the most awe-inspiring creative experience for me to witness. I'm so honored that I got to witness it in real time for the past few years. Obviously, it's not necessarily over, and of course that's the huge controversy at the end of this video. But I'm even if it was, I'm so incredibly blessed that I got to experience it, and that I got to live at the exact time that I did with this band and this beautiful, incredible piece of art that they've crafted over multiple albums. It really is astounding to me. It really is amazing as a writer as well, and I think we very much as a fandom underestimate how incredible this actually is, and obviously the music industry as a whole is completely overlooking how insane Tyler Joseph is to put all this together with so much intentionality and detail that should be impossible through the device of songs, but he did it anyway. And music videos. Insane. yeah, like Becca noted, oh, they like even used CGI, like that's how much they care, that's how much they wanted to bring the story to life with this video. And I was just gobsmacked, to quote overcompensate, because I've never witnessed that much attention to detail in a music video before either. So, like most people, I was a little surprised none of the bird section was in the video, but also it makes sense that it wasn't. I think that's maybe also why it was very jarring when it was over, because it felt like it wasn't supposed to be over yet. But yeah, I started crying right after we finished it, because just as an artist, it blows me away. It's truly my biggest creative inspiration, and to see it come anywhere near a close is super emotional. Not because I can no longer access it, but because the novelty of this beautiful fuel is something I never want to lose. So yeah, I just had a lot of thoughts as a creative person, and it really solidified that Tyler Joseph will always be my biggest creative inspiration. So that's really all I had to say about that for now. Feel free to let me know what your guys' thoughts and reactions were. It's a huge, momentous occasion in our fandom. And obviously, if you have any thoughts, theories, predictions on anything going forward, feel free to let me know. I know Tyler tweeted that they're not going to do some huge storyline thing at the live show that you have to be at the live show for. Speaking of the fan premiere exhibit, let me know if you're going to that. I'm really privileged and excited that I get to do that with Becca as well. And I love, obviously, that it is abbreviated to FPE. So I think that'll be a really fun time and a nice way to spend the day when we're already sitting around all day. So yeah, that was another sweet surprise for sure. Also, just want to note that after I watched the Paladin Straight video, I ended up going back and watched the story playlist 21 Pilots made of all of the lore videos, and that further solidified my confidence in understanding the lore. So basically everything all together, I just want to say I was very insecure about trying to explain the lore in the past, but now I'm very confident that I can. It feels like a novel, having read it all at once and then watched it all back at once. So I feel very capable now. So never fear if you're confused by it. I think I got you. Famous last words. Watch me make no sense when we get there. But how about Heathens? Let's get to Heathens. So Heathens is not technically a part of Blurryface, but it was a single during the Blurryface era, so I thought it would be appropriate to lump it into the album. And quite honestly, I think this is the one song they've ever written, which is so ironic because it's one of their most popular songs, but it's probably the one song they've ever written that I can be okay with skipping. Is that a hot take? I don't know. Also, I don't listen to Cancer, but it's not their song, so I don't care. Sorry. Yeah, I don't know why, but so because of my susceptibility to skip it, I forgot how much of a banger this song is. Clearly, because everyone else thinks that except me, apparently. So there's a lot here, though. Those of you who follow me on Instagram know there's a billion facts about this song, just like there was for Stressed Out, because it's the second biggest song. So that being said, first fun fact, it's the top single alongside Stressed Out. This single was released for the DC Comics movie Suicide Squad in 2016. It was released by Atlantic Records and Warner Brothers Records. After a leak of the song on June 15th, 2016, the band tweeted, "Take it slow" in Morse code, which is one of the lyrics, of course. The soundtrack for the movie was then released on August 5th, 2016, so it got leaked a few months early. By them, who knows? And then in December 2016, they released the Mute Math and 21 Pilots mashup. And then I was very pleasantly surprised, as I'm sure a lot of you were a couple years ago, July 15th, 2022, they did a mashup of Heathens with the Stranger Things, why can I not talk? The Stranger Things theme song, and that was at the Electric Castle Festival in Romania. So then there's plenty of facts regarding charting for the song, of course, because it's huge. It made it to number 2 on the US Billboard Hot 100. This song was nominated for 3 Grammys at the 59th Annual Awards. It spent 18 consecutive weeks, 18, in the top 10 of the Hot 100 before dropping out on December 31st, 2016. That's convenient at the end of the year. Heathens reached number 1 on the Hot Rock Songs chart and holds the record for the second longest running single at number 1, which was 30 weeks. The song also peaked at number 1 on the Alternative Songs chart and reached the top 20 in many others. And by September 2017, it had sold over 2.1 million copies in the US. It's the second 21 Pilots track to sell over 10 million copies, aside from Stressed Out, of course. Also, it's popular enough that it's been played all over and by multiple people. So the band performed it for the first time in concert at the Uptown Amphitheater at the Music Factory in Charlotte, North Carolina, on June 28th, 2016. And then they performed it on episode 2 of Saturday Night Live's 42nd season. This track was featured on Chicago PD, Problem Gambling documentary, and Claire Byrne Live. I wouldn't be surprised if it was featured on more that we don't know. And it was covered by at least 5 big artists, including Vic Mensa, who did a freestyle rap over the track regarding violence in Chicago. And then I saved my favorite 2 facts for last. With Ride at number 5 and Heathens at 4 in the same week, 21 Pilots became the 3rd rock act with simultaneous top 5 Hot 100 singles on the charts, 58-year history, following only 2 artists, okay, like the biggest artists, the Beatles and Elvis Presley. And they were also the first duo to do this in 3 years. I was astounded by that. I was like, praise God. So what you're saying is they were the first Christians to do this. Amen. No, I don't know. Were the Beatles or Elvis Presley Christians? If they were, I mean, I would love to know. I'm not sure. I actually have no idea. And then I also just wanted to share Tyler's thoughts on the song. He said, as I was writing the song, the quote was, I was like, but I feel like a more, what's the word? Now I can't think of the word, so never mind. I was like, I want this song to be a 21 Pilots song first. And I want it to resonate with our fans and make sense at our show. Even though the themes in the movie inspired the beginning, as the lyrics came together and as the song came together, I realized this was our song. And I think maybe my inclination to not play the song much is because I didn't feel that way, but since analyzing it, I'm like, oh yeah, this totally fits in their discography with the themes, and in fact brings some new commentary I really love on Christian culture as a whole, and hypocrisy. So I'm excited to dig into that. I really don't have verses today, but I have a lot of sass about Christian culture. So buckle up, buttercup. So yeah, there's just a ton to get to, and I'm feeling motivated and determined, and frankly, I'm trying to pause as little as possible so future Anna can be grateful, because when I tell you it's been the busiest 2 weeks and I'm still in the midst of a very busy time, I mean it, and I would love to help out future Anna any way that I can. So let's dig into the musicality of Heathens. It has a fade in that's very eerie and haunting, as I think most of the track is very eerie and haunting. Added to the fact are the minor piano chords that happen, the static effect that kind of feels like when you're like out in the woods and all of a sudden like your electronics get cut off because you're in danger. And then the bass and the synth. add to the ominousness as well. What I am assuming are the synth thumps, the like, did it. If it's something else musically, please let me know. I realize I could be completely wrong, but I'm assuming it's the synth because I didn't really know what else it sounded like. I didn't think it was a guitar, but maybe I'm wrong. But that in particular definitely feels like a monster. Like, it feels like a horror movie when something's like approaching you and like, don't turn around. I feel like I've seen like a few Quiet Place scenes pop up lately for some reason. Did a movie just come out maybe? And so I was thinking of A Quiet Place in particular with some of this eeriness going on. But yeah, it feels like something's creeping up behind you, and I feel like this is not the only song that has reminded me of the line "we're surrounded and hounded" in Morph. There's very much this theme of adversaries tracking you down and chasing you and being perpetually on your tail. And this song definitely, I cannot think of words, it contributes to that theme. That's definitely not the word I wanted, but it'll do. That'll do, pig. Name that book. Okay, so then I also just noted, even though it's technically a lyric, the "watch it" throughout the song. I love that part. It goes so hard with the bass. And that feels very Lane Boy to me, with trying to control them, make sure they're staying in their lane, make sure they're being contained. Definitely gave those vibes. And then I also noted that there are a lot of vocal echoes and even just like additional thoughts and mutterings within the vocals throughout the track. And I think these could symbolize possible like outside voices, people contributing their thoughts. Kind of this idea of like you're getting a billion perspectives and opinions and thoughts, whether you want to or not, that can really like muddy your belief systems and all of that. But also, perhaps it's like more representative of internal voices, whether it's like your conscience or, yeah, I don't know, just this idea of feeling very like disoriented because there's like too many thoughts swirling around, maybe from anxiety or other mental illness. Obviously, like if you were to go so literally, you could even analyze like schizophrenia, and just this idea that there's so much going on that you're kind of have your reality distorted and you don't really know what's what because there's too many voices trying to take over, which is also a reason someone could be a heathen, because they're just overwhelmed by the amount of voices and don't want to buy into certain ones. So let us now turn to the lyrics. I feel like I'm trying so hard not to pause, and I'm actually like flying through this a lot faster than I expected. But that's not a bad thing. I feel like I'm also trying to make sure my energy stays up before my sleepy slump hits. So, surprise, surprise, it's late at night. So before I get hit by a wall of exhaustion, I'm gonna be as chipper as I can and get through as much as I can. So it starts with the chorus, and he says, "All my friends are heathens, take it slow, wait for them to ask you who you know, please don't make any sudden moves, you don't know the half of the abuse." And that repeats. I first noted the word heathen, of course, because that's integral to this song, and I think, especially for our purposes, it makes the most sense to stick to the definition of not holding to a main religion. And then in terms of the live show, I thought this definition is interesting because he's basically calling people out for not being part of Christianity, whilst asking the crowd, or at least, I don't know if he did this at every show, but he certainly did with the 2022 mashup. He asked them to sway, and basically, if you have not seen the video, by sway, he means like move both arms up and down in a way that looks like worship, for lack of a better term. Like, it looks like you're bowing down to someone. And so that would be very heathenistic of a literal idol of Tyler standing on stage. So, like, it visually looks like they're bowing down to him, which I just think is a really ironically funny, mostly because I have a idolatry history. I guess technically it's not funny, but I think it's funny. So he's saying all my friends are not holding to a main religion, so take it slow. And I think this could literally mean all my friends, or this could also just feel like you're in isolation as a Christian, because so much of culture, especially in America, seems to be just gradually turning away from Christianity and God. And so in that way, it can definitely feel like this overwhelm of no one's really living the same way I am around me, even though that's what I'm holding to. But because there's this prevalence of not holding to Christianity in the immediate surroundings, it helps to take it slow in terms of faith, in terms of the gospel, in terms of even like personal testimony. It never helps to be forceful and to coerce people into a conversation or situation that they don't want to be in. To take it slow is to also be respectful and cognizant of people having a different story than you too. To be empathetic that there are more relationships to a religion than yours, that there are more wounds, of course, like he mentions with not knowing the half of the abuse. And on the other side, not only can some people just not be a part of the faith, but other people, and many people that I know, and perhaps you know, have also left the faith. They used to be, but they no longer prescribe to Christianity. And that's where we need to be even more slow and careful and cognizant of what people's stories actually are, so that we're not adding to the harm. Wait for them to ask you who you know. I think that kind of builds off taking it slow. Make an effort to not just jump the gun with what you want to talk about spiritually, but let them initiate at times, especially if they have a lot of deep wounds. It's just like anything, like with trauma, you don't want to open that without someone's permission. So on the flip side, another way to wait for them while not just being passive is to continuously exemplify and try to strive to emulate Christ to the best of your imperfect ability, but through God's mercy and grace in your heart and in your life, His persistence in molding you and your presence in these other people's lives, in these heathens' lives, in these non-Christians' lives, will inevitably probably invoke some curiosity, especially if it's genuine. I mean, not even especially, if it is genuine faith and only genuine faith. The Christ-like characteristics are obviously appealing because it's God and He's fulfilling and He's everything that we need. And so if we're truly trying to point ourselves towards Him and be transformed by Him, it's going to be attractive to other people, even if they can't put their finger on it. And a lot of times people are going to notice. And that's something that I think is so important about like the jumpsuit music video and Hebrews 12:1-2. Just being cognizant that people are watching, despite what they say about Christianity. They're also watching, even if they have been hurt, because even if it is for a cynical reason, even if it is to like try to catch you red-handed or whatever, like trying to find flaws or something in logic, they're still using some rationale to essentially pay attention to you and how you are living out your faith. So even if they don't want to be a part of it, people inevitably are still in relationship with God and faith to some degree, even if it's not wanting anything to do with it. There's always a reasoning behind it, right? And I think that's a very intriguing part of interacting with non-believers, because everyone has their reasoning for being where they're at. Everyone has been molded by different factors, even if it's not a Christian being molded by God. Because of that, it also means that everyone is always able to continue to be molded, and that is also hopefully very hopeful and optimistic for us to keep in mind. Please don't make any sudden moves. You don't know the half of the abuse. Again, kind of the same ideas we've already talked about, but on top of needing empathy and taking it slow, this also is a reminder to be gentle. I think if there's anything I could encourage people who have not experienced any type of abuse, it's gentleness does a world of wonders. And gentleness can also include like just being present with someone and not saying anything either. Gentleness doesn't just have to come through words, it can just come through actions too. It's interesting to consider like how dark the song feels, but how considerate in the context of a Christian lens the lyrics are. I don't know, it's very interesting to me. And again, that doesn't mean that's all that the lyrics mean, but in this context, it's a very, I don't know, it feels like it's a very culturally intriguing soundscape that people are attracted to, but they don't realize the full spiritual implications of what they're saying because of the way that it's masked. Yeah, but I feel like that's, of course, like a huge theme of 21 Pilots. The rapping usually doesn't look like what's inside. I feel like Tyler would definitely be that person who wraps something up in like 50 boxes so you don't actually know what it is. You would think that's like so funny. Tell me I'm wrong. So then we move into verse 1. He says, "Welcome to the room of people who have rooms of people that they loved one day, docked away. Just because we check the guns at the door doesn't mean our brains will change from hand grenades. You'll never know the psychopath sitting next to you. You'll never know the murderer sitting next to you. You'll think, how'd I get here sitting next to you? But after all I've said, please don't forget." Which rolls into, please don't forget, all my friends are heathens. Take it slow. Welcome to the room of people who have rooms of people that they loved one day docked away. So to dock something, I thought the most relevant definition was to remove part of, to withhold. So in this context, it's like people have rooms of people that they loved, but then they decided to rescind part of their love. And I think this is where, in my mind, the spiritual elements of this song turn from like, here's what this group of people should do with this group of people, into here's how both groups of people are equally sinful, which is always important to note, to make sure that people don't get too prideful and judgmental. Christians can easily rescind part of their love when they find out people are not Christians, because all of a sudden they're going to start wanting to judge their choices and feel like, oh, I'm better than them because I follow this, and this that the Bible says, and they're obviously not because they do this, and this. And then, of course, like non-Christians will rescind love from Christians, and they find out they're Christians because it brings up old wounds, like all the things we've already said. It can be angering because there can be a lot of hypocrisy in Christianity. There can be a lot of, obviously, like corrupt churches and all of that. And there can also be just a lot of instances where people are not, hypocrites. They're not doing what they claim their lives are supposed to be. And, hatred, especially online and such, is a huge part of that hypocrisy in our current culture. Just because this is like a whole different thought. Just because we check the guns at the door doesn't mean our brains will change from hand grenades. This goes right into mental health. We are so good at taking security measures any and everywhere that we can. I know for me in my workplace, we have very tight security. Make sure that people have like key codes and don't let anyone in if they, don't let anyone in with you if they don't work there. I have to talk to the operations team who will ask them what they're there for and then like handle it and whatnot. Similarly, people can't just come in and go upstairs. You have to also have a key card for that. And then of course, like same thing for living spaces, obviously, whether it's keys or codes, what have you. And of course, in this context and in our favorite context, it's at concerts, making sure that bags are checked appropriately, that people are going through metal detectors and all of those types of things. We're really thorough and great at security, but that doesn't mean that we can prevent what violence is brewing internally among people. Suicidal ideation, murderous intent, things like that. Those are not things that we can stamp out, unfortunately. And this is very guns for hands centric, of course. I think this also builds off the previous line with the like docking love of this idea that we can be so critical and hard on others when they're different from us, but also for projection purposes, if we're that critical and easily judgmental of others, how much more are we on ourselves, which I think is another big contribution to suicidal ideation. It can be very based on like self-hatred and low self-esteem, which is why I've said this before, at least online, and even if I've said it on a podcast before, I will say it again. If you are struggling with depression and you also know that you have low self-esteem, do not play with fire. Start working on your self-esteem, because that's a really scary combo to have. So then I noted, with talking about psychopath and murderer, these different types of people sitting next to you, everyone can look the same externally, right? No matter what's going on internal. And so the external ultimately, like in these scenarios, especially like psychopath or murderer, it's not going to account for the internal. You're not going to be able to tell who these people are or could be just based on looking at them sitting on their couch, you know? I think I just said that like the Happy Wheels video. Anyway, that was very subconscious. We're on a couch. I mean, bed. If you know, you know. If you don't, I mean, how many times do I have to tell you to watch it? Okay, so basically, I also think this whole portion and the repetition of like how I get here sitting next to you, it's so important to remember that we all have the same capacity for evil. And part that like I really want to drive home, that like kind of drives me nuts in a lot of scenarios, even these like scenarios like murder and what have you that seem like, well, those are just out of this world, unhuman, whatever. I think especially since going through multiple traumas, something I get very upset about is any scenario where it feels like anyone, even quote-unquote horrible people, are dehumanized. Don't dehumanize people. And something I always consider is how we are all equal in our capacity for evil, which is why I'm so excited that I get to talk about this with this track. And so anyway, the line, how'd I get here sitting next to you? To me, I read this as just this astonishment and incredulity, like, oh my gosh, how did I get here? And it just gets under my skin, not because I've never done this, but because it's just, when you really think about it, you really think about your beliefs and your theology, you're like, why are we astonished by sin? Sure, maybe some sins are more hidden, or it might seem like they're less common, or they might seem more alien, or like, how the heck could your brain get to that point, or whatnot? Like, that makes logical sense that you would think that, but the reality is we have every reason to know without doubt that this should not be surprising, and yet we continue to act surprised anytime we uncover the fact that people are sinful. So like, obviously, you know, with all of the nuances of scenarios and shock value of, you know, is a huge part of being human, not trying to minimize any of that, but ultimately as a whole, it's like we're acting surprised by sin, and like I think that kind of makes us look dumb as Christians. Why are we acting surprised by this? We should not be acting surprised by this. Like, that's one of the most basic things that we know in our belief system. No, and yeah, it's like, this is horrible. It's corrupt. Like, yes, but simultaneously, not surprising. Shouldn't be surprising. So anyway, so moral of the story, stop being surprised. None of this should be surprising. Like, God's sitting there, like, completely blank-faced. Like, guys, I know. Like, this is not surprising. Even the most, like, insane, violent things you can think of, God's like, yeah, I been new. It's not surprising, unfortunately. It's obviously still sad, still angering, but surprising? No. So then it goes back into all my friends are heathens. Take it slow. Like, this is prefaced by please don't forget. And so at this point, given kind of the level playing field that was insinuated, in my opinion, in that verse, it now feels like heathens could also encapsulate Christians as well, because we're great at idolatry and we're great at being hypocritical. And in that way, it's like we're turning away from God a little bit because that's our inclination as a human. So it's not like we're not prescribing to Christianity or a major belief, because we are, but we're not. I would say it makes sense that we could be lumped in because we're not prescribing to God in those moments when we're defying God. So then we go into verse 2. I'm honestly starting to struggle, not because of exhaustion like you would think, but because I'm sweating profusely. I, of course, turned off my fan so that there would be no loud background noise, but now I'm sweating like a dog because my windows are shut because it was downpouring and it's going to continue to downpour. It might actually be downpouring right now. I'm honestly scared because tomorrow I go see Niall Horan, my man, my short king, at an outdoor amphitheater, and it's going to be raining all day because of the hurricane. And I'm going to have to stand there with my friend in a poncho and hope that I don't just slip on mud and eat it, you know. I'm already picturing myself doing that, and it's funny, even though it's not happened. Anyway, so let's get into verse 2 while I sweat profusely. We don't deal with outsiders very well. They say newcomers have a certain smell. Wonder if it smells like the candle, but he only made one. You have trust issues, not to mention they say they can smell your intentions. You'll never know the freak show sitting next to you. You'll have some weird people sitting next to you. It's me, I'm the weird person. You'll think, how did I get here sitting next to you? But after all I've said, please don't forget. I was curious if the we meant Christians here, because I would agree we don't deal with outsiders very well. But it could just mean we, like literally everyone. In either case, I mean, it's true. It's a very true statement. No matter who you are or what your belief system is, we don't deal with people in different groups very well at all. And they say newcomers have a certain smell. I don't think this means they're stinky, but I think there's a lot of skepticism with acceptance in religious spaces, especially. Back in my soapbox, I feel like there's so many non-rules that Christians like to make rules that makes me incredibly aggravated. Like, even though people say you can come as you are, there's so much hypocrisy there. Like, even just on a Sunday, even just like what you wear, it's like you can come as you are, but actually, like, if you wear this and 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 this, we're gonna judge you and we're gonna rank ourselves above you. Similarly, it's like you can come as you are, but actually, like, if you're LGBTQ plus, don't. That gets under my skin, as it should. And those are just 2 examples, but I'm sure you can think of many more. If I keep thinking about it, I feel like I'm gonna rage, so I'm not going to. But point being, yes, Christians are great at being the most judgmental when they want to be, even when they don't want to be, because that's our sin nature. The smell in particular, though, back to like sharing the gospel and how to be delicate, how to be gentle, how to be empathetic, that people's stories are not the same as yours. People can tell when you have ulterior motives. Here's another soapbox. I have a lot today. Can you tell? This is just my opinion, but because I have a lot of non-Christian friends who I would take a bullet for, and I love them, and I've always loved them. I also have friends who've left the church, and I love them, and I will always love them. In both cases, I did not become their friend just to try to convert them. And I think some people, maybe especially newer Christians, can have this idea that going into a relationship with a non-Christian is just to convert them. Please don't do that. In my humble opinion, please don't do that. Number one, because they will smell it and they will not like you and they will run away. But also, that's just not, it's kind of dehumanizing. They're not a project. They're a person. Treat them like a person. Do life with them like a person. Not like you're adding them to your point system of, just don't. Just don't. Anyway, I'm gonna leave it at that. Yeah. Similarly, I think Christians can also tell if someone's coming into their space just to maybe be hostile. I think that's also definitely a thing. Some people genuinely are curious. Some people genuinely want to have constructive disagreement and conversation. But I think some people sometimes, maybe more so electronically because it's less intimidating, you can hide more. Some people, I think, do go into Christian spaces with the intention of just being angry at people, and which is valid given how much hurt the church can inflict. But sometimes there's really no motive, the ulterior motive is to just harm Christians out of bitterness or whatever else it might be, vengeance for something. So in either case, it can be very apparent when someone's not being genuine. And because of that, obviously as humans, we have trust issues, not to mention they can smell your intentions. Yeah, there's a lot of hypocrisy, like I've said a billion times. But also, I think, and this is also why I'm don't go into relationships just to try to convert people, is what if, and this is a very valid probability, they decide to reject the gospel? Are you then just going to dip out and not talk to them anymore? Are you going to basically ghost the relationship because your project didn't work out how you wanted it to? It's a very not good slippery slope, and then that actually ends up being more hurtful than if you've gone in with different intentions. So yeah, and I think people, obviously, I'm sure a lot of people do not have those intentions as Christians, but there definitely are still and always will be some people like that. And I think that is one of a billion different reasons why non-Christians can have trust issues. You say you love me, but as soon as I do something that rejects Christianity, you suddenly don't love me. Yeah, and I think that also just boils down to a sin of forgetting or misinterpreting as conditional, I guess. So anyway, I also noted that in this stanza compared to the previous one, that was more about the state of someone's intentions with psychopath or murderer. Maybe not intentions, that's not the right word. But anyway, you have that stanza was more focused on, how would you say that, internal heart postures, whereas freak show and weird is more external in terms of being out of place. And I think these word choices are more so to emphasize that we also all have in common that we're on a level playing field with being out of place somewhere. And I think that really builds off the previous lines of the hypocrisy and the exclusion and the conditional stipulations. Ultimately, we all have the out of place in common, even if it's not the same exact experience. So then you have the sick bass coming in with the watch its and then repeat the chorus, and then we have the outro. So it says, why did you come? You knew you should have stayed. It's blasphemy. I tried to warn you just to stay away, and now they're outside ready to bust. It looks like you might be one of us. So blasphemy is basically like being disrespectful to God. Why'd you come? You knew you should have stayed. I noted why'd you come and blasphemy as, I feel like I just said this, but skepticism with acceptance in religious spaces. Like, oh, if you're someone who's not of the faith and you could be blasphemous, like, why would you come here? Why are you at church? Like, obviously no one would literally say that, but we can have like a prideful, judgmental attitude of like, oh, I know you're past with like the way you've talked about God or whatnot, and now you think you can just like come in this space. This skepticism with like, are you going to make fun of us by coming here? Are you like being genuine? There's also can be that fear, I think, depending on someone's history. But because of that, it's like, how about instead of like making assumptions and having prejudice, like get to actually know these people who are new to the church, maybe aren't even Christians yet, instead of just trying to scrutinize them and judge them and rank yourselves against them or like compare. And I keep like blanking out on very particular words. Yeah, I think you knew what I meant though. And similarly, this is the other note I really wanted to make. A lot of my soapboxes and tangents are basically about like Sundays and being at church, literally. But kind of similar to the not judging people when they walk in and what they're wearing and all of that. Don't try to create a homogenous culture. Like, genuinely, everyone is allowed to come as they are. And I think I also harp on these points and I have my soapboxes about these things because I also went to a Christian college, which I realize is not everyone's experience. But I feel like that's also a very particular experience where you're not only around people your age all the time, but you're also around, for the most part, Christians your age all the time. And for me, it's a weird space. It's a weird space because it inevitably, like any large space, is going to become cliquey, and in that way there's going to be there's going to be like a main group or whatever. Not necessarily like a popular group like high school, but I feel like when you're in a Christian space like that, it kind of feels like, oh, the majority of people wear this or do this or act like this. Like for me in particular, I'm thinking of like women from my college. There's, most people do this or wear this or talk like this. And so you can't help but wonder like, oh, is that what everyone's supposed to do? And it's like, no, there's plenty of other ways to be a Christian. But I think in situations like that, especially when you're at a very insecure age, I feel like college age is a very insecure age, like 18 to 22, very new to discovering who you are as a whole. It can be easy to feel pressure like, oh, am I not doing stuff right? Am I not acting correctly? But genuinely, God invites us to come as we are. He's not lying. That he did say that. Me, as far as application goes, me in those scenarios, I like specifically would notice what the majority was doing, and I would specifically not do that. Like, if people were wearing North Face, I'm not wearing North Face. I was wearing band merch, and I still do all the time. And to me, like, it might not seem like much, but to me, I was like, this is my defiance that being a Christian woman at my college does not have to look one way. And maybe that's more a me thing that I needed to work through, but if anyone else has ever felt that way, just know that you can genuinely come as you are, regardless of what everyone else is doing. Even if every single person but you jumped off the bridge, that doesn't mean you should, or even obviously need to. Maybe that's a better example with the need to wording. But I tried to warn you, and I think the warning in this passage sticks out because ultimately it's like, yeah, it's inevitable that you're going to get hurt. So you should have stayed away, but you didn't. So just know that you're going to be hurt by broken people. In this case, I'd say, like, emphasize that, like, you're going to be hurt by Christians. It's just part of it. Even when you are a Christian, you're still going to be hurt by Christians. It's not like Christianity is keeping you from harm, communal harm. It's going to happen anyway because our brokenness does not change just because we have salvation on earth. And then I noted, now they're outside ready to bust. Bust in this case I took to mean like ready to shake some things up, cause some violence. This to me is like kind of everything I've been talking about with hypocrisy and judgment going completely rogue, and the epitome of what not to do and why you shouldn't do those things, because at the very worst it can lead to hostility when it goes too far, to the point where people cannot even know how to like control their emotions and end up doing horrible things. As you know, some people can do things in the name of God that are like not Christ-like at all, and to me that's kind of the same idea of like just complete hostility and othering and dehumanization of different groups just because they don't think the same way as you do or prioritize the same way as you do. So, again, just want to ultimately emphasize with the end of the lyrics that sin and hypocrisy are present among everyone, and because of that, even with Christians, no one is elevated. And that actually does remind me of a verse, so let me pull that up. Romans 3:12, there is none who does good, no, not one. I think ultimately with all of my soapboxes, I think it just proves that I think about this verse a lot, because it's a very humbling reminder that I'm not better than anyone else and no one else is worse than me. And I think this is also a huge verse to remember when working through forgiveness. Remember how God viewed you and worked through your shortcomings, and in turn we can do the same for others. So yeah, ultimately I really appreciate this song spiritually. Even if that was not its initial intention, I think this track really touches on literally everyone and everyone's identity. It's something that can really acknowledge non-Christians' beliefs and just acknowledge the fact that there are plenty of people who are literally just choosing to live apart from God. But then on the other hand, it's also a very convicting song for Christians that we can be hypocritical, we can approach things incorrectly and inappropriately, and it's really important to be humble, to not be prideful, so that we can really just be genuine and not have ulterior motives and really meet non-Christians where they're at and really serve them in that way instead of putting our wants and our desires first. Of course we're called to spread the gospel. Of course we're called to, bring his name to every nation, but we're also called to love. And that is going to look different for each person in their story. And so it's not really wise to just forget what other people need just because we really want to let people know of the gospel. So yeah, hopefully this can be a reminder to prioritize love as much as we prioritize wanting to share the gospel, instead of leaning too heavy on one and then forgetting about all the ways to love in that process and along the way. So yeah, obviously have to use wisdom and discernment with God to figure out what that means in different scenarios, but that's all she wrote for tonight. So I will talk to you guys soon. I promise I will talk to you guys sooner than this past round. But that being said, I could talk to you even sooner. If you want to reach out, you can email EnTrenchPodcast@gmail.com with a written account of your 21 Pilots story or your favorite memories you have related to the band. I know no one has in quite some time, but if you're new, I still would love to hear stuff, even if it's been a while. We still have multiple albums to get through. We still have plenty of content, easily over a year of additional content still. So please don't be shy. Don't be afraid of oh, but no one does anymore. No, I would love to hear from you. It's not too late. So you can also reach out with an episode request if you want to analyze a song, video, or album with me. I already have gotten a couple requests for Clancy tracks as well, so feel free to reach out if any of those or the videos pique your interest, even if it's the Paladin Straight video and it's the last thing for the foreseeable future. But yeah, feel free to reach out. There's still a lot of Scaled and Icy. There's still a lot of Clancy, obviously. And there's still stuff on Trench. There's still more than you think available on Trench. So feel free to reach out about Trench as well. And obviously, I love Trench. I still am torn on whether I love Trench or Clancy more. But I'm very excited to celebrate Trench with all of you who want to join me on podcasts. And so I'd love even more of you to join me on anything with Trench because it's very near and dear to me. And I'm sure it's near and dear to a lot of you and certainly to the band. So if you want to join with Trench, seriously, let's go. If you'd like to contribute to the analysis we've already covered, you can send an email or message me on Instagram at EnTrench_pod. I would love if people think of Bible verses that I completely missed, or even just takes on any lyrics that I completely missed. I would love to know. And I would love to share it with everyone else too, so we can have all of this knowledge together. Knowledge is power. You can find, sorry, I'm going in so many tangents on this outro. It's going to be way longer than normal. Yeah, but I'm working on trying to say thank you instead of sorry. So thank you for listening to my extra tangents and the outro being longer than normal. Wink, wink. You can find EnTrench on Podbean, Verbal, Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon Music. I look forward to hearing from you on whatever channel you choose. Tune in next time for the Heathens music video. Thank you so much for listening, friends. Stay alive and remember, EnTrench, you're not alone.